So in my previous video and in many previous videos of mine, I have proven that the narratives of the preachers today concerning Daniel 9 are all false. And there is a reason for that. The reason for that is they reject salvation for Israel. You see, in Daniel 9, we'll go to it. In Daniel 9, it speaks of reconciliation. It speaks of reanointing or reappointing the most holy place, Jerusalem. It speaks of forgiveness of sin on the people of Israel and Jerusalem. It begins in verse 24. 70 weeks are determined upon your people and upon the holy city to finish the transgressions. You see, the transgression of Israel, Judah, and Jerusalem will come to an end. And the Apostle Paul backs it up in Romans 11 and verse 26. Reconciliation for iniquity, everlasting righteousness for Israel. This is the reason why the narratives from your preachers, your paid preachers, are all false. Rejection of forgiveness of sin for Israel at the appointed time, at the end of 77s. They never mention what I just said. They never mention forgiveness of sin in the entire house of Israel, house of Judah and Judah. They do not. The only thing that they care about is the rapture. And the Catholics don't even care about that. They think that the New Jerusalem is somehow in Rome, which is as far from the truth as you can get. So, the rapture people, what they want to do is somehow figure in that there are 3.5 more years of tribulation left on Israel. When the 3.5 years that they are talking about happened nearly 2,000 years ago. You see, that 7 years of Daniel 9 and verse 27, it's finished, it's complete, it's over. But there is 3.5 year tribulation upon the Gentiles in retaliation for what they have done to Jerusalem. And the figurehead, the ruler of the Gentiles at that time was Rome, and so therefore Rome and its entire religion is going to feel the wrath of Jehovah. Yes, the entire religion of Christianity. Why do I say that? Has Yeshua ever called his followers Christians? No, he did not. You cannot find anywhere where he did. Christ is a term that comes from Mithraism, where the worship of the sun god and the moon god came from. And it was carried on from the lands of Persia all the way into Rome, and it remains within what is now known as Christianity today, the Roman religion. Christianity has absolutely nothing to do with the followers of Yeshua. Revelation 17 and verse 6. Talks about Mystery of Babylon the Great, and I have shown how Babylon was not limited to one particular city. It started with Old Babylon, which is in Iraq today. And the second phase was Constantinople, which was the Babylon of its time, and it was burned with fire by the 10 toes, the Crusaders, exactly as it is written. And then in the last, at the very last, all the cities, all the metropolises of the world are going to come crashing in. That is at the time when all Israel is going to come out of Babylon, figuratively speaking, which means all the cities of this world, because they're all like Sodom and Gomorrah. Let's start in verse 5. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abomination of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints. That is the Jews. If you go to the book of Daniel in 12, the saints are the Jews. That is Daniel's people. And also the blood of the martyrs of Yeshua. So the blood of the martyrs of Yeshua, they are Jews who followed Yeshua and Gentiles who followed Yeshua. And as we know, Christianity is responsible for the murders of the Jews since Constantine, and for the murders of those who followed Yeshua. And this is the reason why the cities of this world, and these are the cities of Europe, but not limited to Europe. In Isaiah 60, it's the cities of the Mediterranean Sea. Daniel 2, it talks about the beasts, the four beasts rising up out of the Mediterranean Sea. Even though, anyway, I don't want to get off track here. I'm talking about false narratives. 3.5 year tribulation upon the Gentiles. The proof of this is in Joel 3. For behold, in those nations, verse 1, and in that time, when I bring again the captives of Judah and Jerusalem, in other words, he's going to bring them back, the captives of Judah and Jerusalem, back to Judah and Jerusalem. Well, they are there. So in those days, I will also gather all Goyim. Kind of hard to screw that one up, isn't it? And bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will put them on trial there for my people and my heritage Israel. So, he is specifically and strictly punishing the Gentiles for what they have done to Israel. Now we must go to the point of the two witnesses. Now we understand that this punishment in Joel 3 is exclusively on the Gentiles. let's see how long this tribulation is. Revelation 11 and verse 3. Let's begin in verse 1. And this prophecy was written while the temple was still standing. And there was given unto me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood therein, rise and measure the temple of Jehovah and the altar and them that worship therein. But the court which is outside the temple, leave out and measure it not, for it is given to the Gentiles, the Romans. And the holy city they shall tread under foot 42 months. And that is exactly what happened from early spring of 66 AD until September of 70 AD. They did it for 42 months. So, verse 3 is the retaliation, is the punishment. The two witnesses are going to bring the trumpet sounds, the plagues. They're going to be told to call for the trumpet sounds, to call for the plagues. And they will do so like Moses and Aaron did. And it will be against the Gentiles for what they did to Jehovah's heritage, his people, Israel, as it says in Joel 3. I will give power unto my two witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days. So, when they sacked Jerusalem, it might not have been exactly 1,260 days, or it might have been exactly 1,260 days. Clothes in sackcloth, these are the olive trees and the two candlesticks standing before Jehovah, the Elohim of the earth. And if any man will hurt them, fire proceeds out of their mouth. In other words, it will call fire down from heaven like Elijah did, and devours their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must be in this manner be killed. These had the powers to shut heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy, and they had the power over the waters to turn them into blood, and to smite the earth with every plague. Yes, every plague that is written in the trumpet sounds, and every plague that is written in the vials. So, from the mouth of these two witnesses will come the plagues of the trumpet sounds and the vials. And once that 3.5 year punishment upon the Gentiles is finished, the beast that ascended out of the Mediterranean Sea, not the bottomless pit, that is a false translation. You read it, it's Abyssos. Abyssos is the sea, and Abyssos is what the Greeks call the Mediterranean Sea. They shall make war against them, and shall overcome them and kill them, and their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. Now, Yeshua was not crucified in Jerusalem, folks. He was crucified outside the city. So, and they of the people and the kindreds and the tongues of the nations shall see their dead bodies 3.5 days, and shall not allow their dead bodies to be put in graves. And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them, make merry, and shall send gifts to one another, because these two prophets tormented them that dwell upon the earth. Now, when you read further, you realize that what happens next when they are raised from the dead is when the second or the seventh trumpet sounds. Now, all the plagues are in the first 6 trumpets and the first 6 vials. Now, so what I'm saying here is, how can you believe the false narratives of preachers who create a false narrative about Sunday being the Sabbath, following after the ways of Constantine, when clearly the Sabbath is the day that the Jews keep? How can you give them any credibility? How can you give the preacher? Now, these preachers that I'm talking about are the ones who are trying to tell you that there are 3.5 more years of tribulation upon Israel. These are the same people who teach you to celebrate, to commit idolatry, to put crosses on your foreheads and make them with your hand. These are the same preachers who teach you to celebrate Saturn's birthday and call it Christmas. These are the same people who honor the sun god on Easter rather than partaking of Yeshua's supper. These are the same people who take your money using some sort of a Levitical priesthood clause when the Levitical priesthood was eliminated from the new covenant. These are the same people who, like the Pharisees, wear strange clothing and demand honor from their fellow citizens when clearly Yeshua told them not to do so. You cannot believe anything those people say. You cannot believe any of their narratives. You have to study on your own. I proved this point about Daniel 9. And when you read it correctly, you will realize that the sin of Israel, Jerusalem, and Judah is finished. That the time of reconciliation is at hand, is right at the door. It is impossible to come up with any other conclusion unless one is driven by a different spirit. So, put away your rapture narrative. It's a false narrative. I've proven that. When the trumpets begin to sound, that is when, and that's the 3.5-year tribulation upon the Gentiles. When the trumpets begin to sound, the followers of Yeshua and all Jews and all Israelites must go to Zion. It is written in the prophets many times, and it is written in the Gospels. It is written in the epistles. It is written in the Acts of the Apostles. Do not listen to these preachers who tell you to ignore the fact that the new covenant is for the house of Israel and the house of Judah, as it is written in Hebrews 8 and Hebrews 12. It is written there. And they ignore that. Ignore those preachers and their false narratives so that you don't find yourself shut out of the kingdom.